Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, one and all. Thanks for joining us in this episode of SRE Practitioner. We are in episode 25. For people who are joining us for the first time, Site Reliability Engineering Practitioner podcast is interviewing real-world practitioners and leaders globally to share their words of wisdom in how they have gone about implementing site reliability engineering. I'm your host, Suresh GP, and today I have a good friend and esteemed guest, Ruby Agarwal, joining us all the way from Dallas in Texas. She's the vice president of Avaya, and I look forward to hearing from her experience and journey with site reliability engineering. Thanks, Ruby, for joining us, and let our viewers know a little bit about your journey. And it's been a very remarkable and impressive journey in the way to lead to be a vice president of site of your company. So just give us a little bit of
Sure.
background and what pulled you into the world of site reliability engineering.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. It is actually a pleasure. I'm very excited to be here. It's a topic that is very close to my heart. Um, Before I go into my journey, I do want to say while I'm a technology executive by role, I really, in terms of what I do, is I head the cloud transformation, AI adoption, DevSecOps, DevOps, FinOps, Cloud Ops, you name it. If it has an ops, SRE, if it has an ops in it, either I'm driving it or I have a very big influence on it.
Yeah.
I actually personally thrive at the intersection of technology, um, transformation, and operations. And that's being in all of these spaces is what made me get into SRE, if you may, right? So if you have to ask me, first you start with what is SRE in my mind, and we can talk more about that in more detail. But to me, SRE is loyalty to production. It really is about not just when an incident happened, but long before the incident happened, right? So when you think about SRE like that, it really is the SRE journey. It wasn't like a one-day role shift. Hey, now I need you to handle SRE.
Right.
It's been something that I grew into working on different parts of the solution. I've worked across the system. I've been an engineer, I've been a manager, I've been a senior manager, I've been a QA leader, I've been a FinOps lead, I've been a product owner, you name it, and I've been there. And on paper, when people talk about all these roles, it's like different jobs, different roles. But at the core of this, all of this manifests into a single instinct, and that's systems thinking. So when you have systems thinking, you're actually focusing on the solution end to end, like how the system behaves, what's about to fail, what could fail, right? What is going to impact the solution? Where is the complexity hiding, for example? So my journey was in all of these roles, looking into where is the complexity hiding, what is going to break. And as systems grew more and more complex, platform and cloud, what does it do? Either it's going to scale well for you or it's going to collapse if you are not paying attention to it as an SRE, for example, right? It's a small choice that someone could make that could make or break your system. It could have huge consequences. So over time, I was spending less time fixing issues, but really looking at signals, connecting signals, looking at data and metrics, and seeing how my overall solution is performing. And as part of that, basically bringing it back to SRE, what happened was that instinct of systems thinking, basically SRE gave it a name,
Yeah.
if you may. So
Yeah.
that's how SRE came into being for me. It gave it a name, right? Discipline, restore first, like all of those aspects of SRE. So that's where I am.
Awesome. So thanks for sharing your journey. It's been a great focus of you've done multiple roles around, but let's take a step back when you said about system thinking. everybody would love to have system thinking, but typically what I've seen is people being focused on their own expertise. We go deep dive. It could be infrastructure, application, middleware. It's kind of looking at the entire value chain, but people are just focused in depth on those trenches, if you would.
Yes.
So how do we kind of inculcate this whole system thinking? Because that's not a very easy trait to acquire, considering the fact that you move from the left to right, and there's so many moving parts that you don't have control of it. So how did you develop that acumen for systems thinking? Well, we all talk about that's a very important skill. It's a very difficult skill to acquire as well, isn't it?
It's an ability to ask questions. So I'll tell you a couple examples from my early journey, right? I'm talking when I was an architect and I would write the design or an architecture for something. I recognize, like I would write it and then take it to someone else and say poke holes. Okay. Just because I've written it doesn't mean it's perfect. It's like poke holes, right? So for me, it's very important. Why are we doing something? Okay. And it's easier said than done. And when somebody says, I'm doing this to make the code more readable, what value did it give you? What is the customer benefiting? So I do ask those questions all the time. So it's all about, it's just a template, and I wish I had those 10 questions in front of you written. It's just very natural to me now. But it really is, you can start with a set of 10 questions saying, why am I doing it? So when someone, for example, brings me a use case and says, hey, we need to rewrite this code. And I'm like, why? If it ain't broken, do not refactor it, right? So a large part of it is asking the right questions. If somebody says, hey, we need to have this metric, analytics is another big one, right? People say, we need to have this metric. And the question is, does this metric trigger a decision? If it doesn't, okay, does it trigger a behavior change or a decision? And if the answer is not, that it isn't, then it's just a metric, that it's just data. And while data may be useful, it's not something that it may be information, but it's not something that is taking you forward.
No, that makes sense, because I think over a period of time, Ruby, what happens is that people get a lot of experience and kind of what I call as the wisdom. And you're able to decipher this whole aspect and saying that, well, let's not over-engineer things. Let's not major on minor things. Let's focus on things that really move the needle. But ask very specifically why. And I think as leaders and practitioners, as they go up the value chain, the only way that you're going to make it impactful is asking that right question. So I always talk about the curious little wonder kid. The way that you can actually ask a question that you're learning it for the first time actually opens up a lot of opportunities. Now, you have been in this whole engineering discipline. Now, reliability, if you look at from a board level as well as the conversation that I've had, it's a very critical component because we don't want to have downtime. We want to bring in that level of resilience. But which you always talk about that it is a leadership contract as much as engineering discipline. Tell us a little bit about why do you call this as a leadership contract as opposed to engineering discipline, because we thought engineering discipline was what all about reliability was. Based on your experience, why is that leadership contract a very important aspect as well?
So here I'm talking about multi-tenant, large-scale enterprise, Fortune 100 companies, massive scale systems, right? And 24/7 monitoring, 24/7 reliability. The questions we have to answer are, is reliability only engineering excellence, or does it start with decision clarity, right? So if you don't prioritize, so for example, when you have an incident, let's take an incident example. When you have an incident and you have 10 people, 12 people on the call, if you don't have an incident commander, and in this case, the incident commander, it doesn't matter who the person is, but the incident and what their hierarchy is in the org structure. They are the incident commander, and what happens on the bridge is what they're going to do. How are they enabled? They are enabled by leadership. So if the leaders are not backing these incidents, so I had an incident, I would say 4 or 5 years ago, right? And we had this senior leader. He was a VP at the time. I wasn't. He was a VP at the time, and he came in, and it was a new shiny feature that this team had implemented and taken it to the product. And we had an incident. So now people are constantly starting to talk about, let's look at this dashboard, let's look at that dashboard, let's figure this out. And my direction at that time, like, so I'm looking at what kind of conversations that are happening. And my incident manager was not able to tell this leader, we need to focus on restoration. Right. And not these decisions for discussions. We don't need to see the new features or whatever. So you have to look at what is the customer sentiment. What are the engineers talking about during this particular conversation? Engineers are often very hesitant to roll back code. They're like, let me collect some data. Let me get information. These are the kind of things you have to help the teams be comfortable with. It's okay if you got bad code on the system. It just needs to be very quickly removed. So that is why I'm saying it's about leadership discipline and leadership making the teams comfortable that when there is an incident, it's not a blame game. It's about restoring the system, and later we will do a blameless PIR and we'll learn from it. Failures are bound to happen. And it is these failures as leaders that we need to use to improve our systems, not make it a point of so-and-so did not do well. That is why I believe it's a leadership contract.
That makes sense. And one of the things that I see in major incident bridge calls that they always ask this question, okay, what happened? What's the update? We don't allow the team member to focus on restoring the whole part. So sometimes as leaders, we need to take that whole brunt and say, hey, you know what? It's under control. We will take care of it and leave the team to do and empower the team to focus on restoring the results, because you need to have think tank time. I'm trying to resolve an incident or find a root cause. I need absolute clarity in the way I do it. And if you are putting a lot of pressure because everybody's asking for the next update and other stuff, it's just absolutely futile because you're not enabling these people to do that part. So I'm a big fan of major incident bridge being toil, because there's so much people hanging around this part. We don't even know why they are in, but because one of the person said, my manager is there, that's why I'm also being there. So it's a question of really trying to reduce the noise, in my opinion, and just freeing up this time, right?
Yeah.
So that brings us
one
to
of
the
the things, one of the things that I do is you may join a bridge, but no matter what your designation, you're not allowed to say, can someone summarize it for me? You can put it on the chat and let the incident commander tell you. Ideally, you shouldn't have to ask because it's already there in the chat in the meetings. But if you do, that is what you're going to, where you're going to get your data from. And the other thing that I've seen, like you mentioned, is my manager there and does it add pressure? You may be the CEO of an organization, but when you are on an incident bridge, you can observe, but you don't get to throw your weight around. You really need to let the team feel comfortable in doing what they need to do to restore the system. That's it.
Absolutely. No, I think that's perfect. Now, let's come into this part of alert fatigueness. So, as engineers, we have always focused on thresholds. We have focused on, we always think that we should focus on signal to noise ratio, but we have been absolutely plagued with alerts, right? So, we call this as alert fatigueness. So, first of all, what do you do when it comes to alert fatigueness? Because at one end, we talked about improving a signal to noise ratio. The other end, we want to make sure that nothing is missed out. So there's a kind of a balance between ensuring that there is the intent or the signal coming in rather than just being overwhelmed by the alerts, but also we don't want to miss something. So how do you balance between alert fatigueness and signal quality?
So I'll start with one statement. I'd rather have 0 alerts than 1,000 alerts. I'd rather have 5 alerts than 1,000 alerts that are not meaningful. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I inherited one of the programs the cloud operations function for it, including SRE. And this team, the leader there, like they came back and they were like 600 alerts a week. And I kid you not, it was more than that. When I inherited it, I'm like 600 alerts a week. It took me 3 weeks to figure out what the problem was because they kept telling me, oh, we can't handle the workload. And, look at, and then the reports would all be about, here's the number of ServiceNow tickets or Jira tickets that my team is resolving on a daily basis, blah, blah. So I kept looking at it and it hit me. It took me 2 weeks, by the way, and it hit me. And I'm like, and I kept telling this person, why are we so much into the tickets, right? And then it hit me and I asked this question to this leader. I said, can you tell me what percentage of the time an engineer is spending in ServiceNow and Jira versus the actual production Azure or GCP instance? And that hit for that person as well. You're right. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And immediately it was all about the system. The moment they went into the system, it was like, oh, these things are just noise. We started eliminating most of them. I'm always a believer in if the metric that is there, it should work for you. Have fewer metrics and evolve it over time. Add just in time, have the ability to add just in time. Your PIRs, post-incident reviews, they need to have a specific section. Did we have observability? If not, what can we add right away? Right. Put in a hot fix. In fact, I'm adding one metric right now as a hot fix like this week, right? The point being, you've got to, the way to think of signal is not equal to data. What signal is a decision clarity. If it gives you a decision, then it makes sense. If it doesn't give you a decision, make them your P3s and your P4s. You should not have alerts in there. It's just in case I need to use this data. You need just in case. There's other mechanisms to put those kind of alerts in the system. Right. So there's always a balance. How do you determine what that balance is? You grow over time. You start small and then you add to it. That is what works for me.
Absolutely. So one of the things which fascinated me when we had our initial conversation was you've actually grown a lot and you've been very obsessed by modernizing operations. You've always been obsessed with taking pride in being a part of an operations, because I've been in infrastructure operations for 10 years. And people used to hate these jobs because it was either 24/7, we'll have to go long time to troubleshoot and things like that. So how do you kind of see that you develop that inclination of being in that particular zone to actually being obsessed with operations, with the rest of the world thinks that, oh, you know what, operations is most difficult, it's just time consuming, we don't want to be there. I mean, I'm talking about a lot of people who I'm trying to hire in many organizations, and they say that we would rather be doing something on DevOps, or we just being focusing on programming, and we don't want to be in ops/SRE. So how do you kind of develop that skill, or do you think that people are still interested to spend their time in operations and lead them from the front?
There's always a balance. There are people who naturally get operations and there are people who don't. Some people lean in towards it. What has worked for me is discipline. So even in my SRE organization, I tell my team, both DevOps and SRE, just because I sent you an email on Friday evening, 4 p.m., does not mean that it requires an answer on Monday, right? I'm a workaholic, doesn't mean you have to work over the weekend to get me that data. And I'll bring it back to SRE in a second. So, and I've told them there will be once or twice in the entire year that I will ask you to burn the midnight oil and the weekend oil. But that is not this use case or this example. I apply the same principles to SRE. Yes, SRE has on-call engineers. We have, I wouldn't say, so this is a new product that we're working on right now. So we're still working on streamlining and removing the kinks. But having said that, there's always a very clear, specific handoff. In fact, today we were building a post-incident review template. We're revamping it. It's already there. We're revamping it because we realized it was too much toil on one particular team to fill in a lot of data versus the other. So you don't get good data. When you ask more than 5 questions as part of PIR to any one individual, you don't get good data. So for me, it's all about putting a structure, a discipline, and also making sure that we are focusing on the right things, whether it is during the outage, that you focus on restoration, whether it is before the outage, you're doing proactive monitoring and you're making sure you're actually adding the right metrics and putting the right processes, or whether it is post an incident. And I think when you simplify it for people, systems are very complex today. We need to simplify it for them so that they don't have to spend time thinking, now what? And that, I think, makes a big difference.
Yeah, awesome. And I think it moves on to that part of focus on discipline that you said, that it's so important that you do the things today, what is in your hand, relentlessly, and focus on excellence. Now, coming to this gears of FinOps. Now, one of the things is, with a lot of CFOs that I talked to, they said, well, they all promise that when we're going to cloud, everything will become easier, it'll be cheaper, it'll be cost effective. But as I look at my EC2 instances and stuff like that, it's not actually getting me that required ROI. So everybody's asking this question, and I see FinOps being a lot more focused. So how do you see that FinOps and reliability? What does it look for you? And you have had the opportunity to deal with complex, multi-cloud instances with so much focus and complexity. How do you see FinOps? Is it like another bottle in a new wine, or you just kind of
So
focusing on this one?
yes, FinOps is about cost. You start from there, cost and expense, your COGS and ICE, no questions there. But the other way to look at it is when you talk about SRE. So FinOps shows that cost and reliability are part of the same conversation, same sentence in a conversation. They're just different angles. And what I mean by that is, if you think about it, you add additional resources, for example, additional resources or additional subscriptions, additional projects, whatever it is, right? Waste creates fragility. That is the reality. You have waste out there, you have infrastructure sitting out there that is not being used. It's causing problems for you in terms of unused capacity, unnecessary complexity. It may add additional toil for your operations people because there's systems sitting out there. There's an empty disk sitting out there. Oh, is it being used or not? Oh, it's growing. Disk is costing you. It's growing in size. Should we be truncating it? You don't know because it is an unused disk sitting out there. So yes, at the end of the day, it is about cost management. Like, it's really about forcing you to make a decision of how you manage the hygiene of your system, if
Right.
you may.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. So my final question would be AI. Everybody's talking now about AI, and it's changing gears around. So where do you see the aspect of AI in the cycle engineering world? How does it change the whole equation that
It's
you're being?
actually very interesting. We have been experimenting and have been very successful. Like, today is better than yesterday. Yesterday was better than day before. It's that fast that we are incorporating. My SRE lead today in my team, she told me, we get, this is on the reactive side. She said, hey, these tickets that I get, whether the customer opens or it's opened as part of an alert that was raised, right? They're not coming with enough quality. And when I triage it and I send it to the engineering teams, I want to make sure that I'm giving them enough material or enough information so that they don't have to keep asking all those questions, right? So we just built a little prompt and a tool that we integrated into our, in fact, Jira instance, where you can just say, hey, evaluate the quality. That was point one, right? Simple prompt took time for us to generate the prompt, but simple prompt now, and anybody who opens the Jira right there before they even sent it, it's there. Then the next thing she did was connected it to our GitHub instances. She connected it to deployed instance, for example, right? And now it's even telling us, oh, this one is a no fix plant. There's no problem here. Oh, this one is this. So what is happening is things that used to take weeks, she's actually able to do. It took 5 minutes when it's evaluating the code and coming back with, okay, we think here is the problem. At that point, you can send it to the engineering team, let them take a look. It just reduces your MTTR on a CFD. Same exact thing on while you're on an incident. Contact center, you have queues, you have agents, you have all of these things. Being able to see what your system data is within seconds now, it's amazing. You go on I talked about PIR. We're generating our outage incident reports, if you may, using AI completely now based on the RCA that comes. There's hundreds of use cases. Alerts, you can just go into your whatever tool anybody is using, whether it's Datadog, whether it's Prometheus, for example. I mean, I've just run it. I said, what are the standard metrics? Like, what are the metrics I should add to this without having to have architecture calls and design calls? It's just amazing.
Absolutely. So my final question would be the world of SRE. How do you see that in future as it actually unravels with so much mystery, and you've been in this space for a long period of time? If someone wants to aspire to be an SRE, what kind of what's the future look like, and what would be your advice for someone stepping into site reliability engineering?
Don't be afraid of long hours. This isn't about long hours. You can have discipline and not have to do it. I think I started on that note. SRE is here to stay. It may evolve based on how AI automates a lot of the workflows that were being done manually. Whether it is an example could be an incident command. Today, somebody sends a Slack message, for example, and then people swarm on a bridge, and then they're talking, then a Jira is open, then PagerDuty or Ops somebody is paged out, and level 1, level 2, all of that could be an incident commander agent, right? In fact, I have my team trying that out. So all of those 6 steps could be done by just initiating an incident, for example. But now you get to spend the time actually figuring out what the problem is, reduce your MTTR. The first 10, 15 minutes that you spent doing all of these things, you suddenly have an incident commander doing it. So there is a lot of opportunity out there for SREs for people to grow in the SRE space. The amount of cloud that is out there now is crazy. More and more stuff with AI, more and more stuff is going in the cloud. So the need for an SRE is always going to be there. How you build your teams, how you operate is going to continue to evolve. And that is no different from traditional to cloud. Like, it happens. It's just the speed may be slightly different.
Yep, absolutely. And it's been a pleasure talking to you, Ruby, today about the world of SRE and how has it evolved. We talked a lot about this whole aspect of leadership contract and how much it's important to empower people. We talked a little bit about alert fatigueness, signal to think. I love the system thinking part, but also about the FinOps. Like, when you talk about reliability, everything comes with a cost, and you cannot just underestimate the whole part of it. And you see there's a great future for SREs as they go in, even with AI coming in. It helps us to optimize the whole value chain, but also focus on things that really matter the most and then move the needle. So it's been a pleasure. I can see the passion, exuding a lot in terms of the way that you talked about.
I love this topic.
And that's why we wanted to have people like you to share real world experience of what the world in SRE is doing. And we are doing our bit to build world class SRE as part of TaUB solutions, but it's more importantly giving back to the community. So we really value your insights from your, more than 2 decades of experience that you've brought in and then made it done. So thank you so much. We hope to stay in touch, and all the best for your team on the SRE journey going forward.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And it's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm sure we'll stay connected.
Thank you, everyone.